everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and you know what time it is. It's my favorite time of the week because it's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday and gotta decide some wrestlers of the week. Wrestling in the front seat, wrestling in the back seat. Gotta make my mind up. Which wrestlers do I pick for wrestlers of the week? Let's find out. Now, on a more serious note, for the honourable mentions this week, I got a lot of suggestions for various different matches and stuff, and thank you once again to everybody, as always, who emails in or tweets me with suggestions for the honourable mentions, but I did get a lot of suggestions as well from various different people that I should make Lionheart the honourable mention this week. If you don't know who Lionheart was, he was a Scottish wrestler who sadly passed away just a couple of days ago. And yeah, if you don't know who he is, definitely check out some of his work because he was a key, integral part of the British wrestling scene, specifically as well in ICW, and he'll be greatly missed by everybody. So yeah, now let's get on to the top 10. Number 10 this week is Roderick Strong. Now, we all know about Roderick Strong's sneaky heel tendencies. He loves to wait for a week where there's no big WWE pay-per-view or New Japan pay-per-view, or indeed, in this day and age, an AEW pay-per-view. No, Roderick Strong likes to wait until there's none of that going on, sneak in there and pick up a crafty few little points here and there, and he's back at it again this week on NXT. Strong found himself in the main event of this week's NXT in a 6-man tag team match alongside two of his Undisputed Era brethren against the babyface trio of Velveteen Dream, Tyler Breeze and Matt Riddle as well, and Roderick Strong managed to pick up the pinfall victory over Velveteen Dream, who is of course the current NXT North American champion. In doing so, Strong has kept himself well and truly involved in that North American title scene. Could we see him pick up a title shot at some point down the line? Who knows? But it does certainly seem like he's being kept in that sort of vicinity for the time being. It's a strange one as well because I was almost certain that he was going to find himself kicked out of the Undisputed Era and feuding with Adam Cole at some point, especially when Cole was chasing that NXT championship and kept on blaming Roderick Strong for costing him matches. But in the end, actually, it turns out that Adam Cole won the title, they're all still friends, and Roderick Strong could be picking up some solo silverware of his own. Silverware, gold. What is the North America? That bit ready, isn't it? Pick up that lovely reddish belt of his very own. Number 9, a man we don't see too often on Wrestlers of the Week, but one of the more entertaining people in WWE, I think. He is, of course, Xavier Woods. Now, Woods has lost a little bit of prominence recently in terms of his in-ring career, mainly because he's kind of been removed from the glory days of the New Day when they were picking up tag team championship reigns left, right and centre, and now he and Big E, although they were probably in a more prominent position on the card because their mate is the WWE champion, they're not really getting to strut their stuff as much in big featured tag team matches and feuds. But Woods found himself in, I think it was the opening match of this week's SmackDown Live. SmackDown was massively improved from previous weeks as well. It was a big leap in quality, and the big reason for that was this opening match between Xavier Woods and Dolph Ziggler. And yes, okay, Woods lost the match, and yes, you know, it wasn't like a massive blow-away match of the year candidate or anything, but at the same time, it did remind us all what Woods can do, because he's one of those people who's so charismatic and so entertaining and has more stuff going on outside of WWE's main product, so he's got up, up, down, down and that sort of thing. You can kind of forget that he is a wrestler by trade, and a damn good one at that. This is former X Division member in TNA, Consequences Creed, a crucial member of that high-flying division. Put some respect on his name right now. Sorry, got a bit aggressive there, don't know quite what that was about. But yes, Woods also finds himself on the Stomping Grounds card as well. Maybe that match will be bumped to the pre-show, I'm not quite certain, but it's a tag match alongside Big E against the team of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And if it's given enough time, I reckon that could be a pretty good match. Moving from SmackDown now over to Monday Night Raw, the best match on this week's Monday Night Raw was the Fatal 5-Way to become #1 contender for Samoa Joe's US title. The contestants were Miz, Lashley, Cesaro, Strowman, and this week's number 8, Ricochet. You know what, it was a fun match as well with like eliminations going on. It wasn't just a Fatal 5-Way, it was a Fatal 5-Way elimination. People were getting chucked out. Ricochet managed to cling on and survive into a final one-on-one showdown with The Miz, and all throughout, you know, he put in a characteristically good performance. Ricochet is pound for pound one of the smoothest and most fluid wrestlers on the planet, maybe the smoothest. But at the same time, he has found himself a little bit ground to a halt momentum-wise in WWE since leaping to the main roster and having his tag team with Aleister Black broken up. Hopefully this week's good performance was a sign that Ricochet is once again being given the ball and is going to be allowed to run with it a little bit. His match with Samoa Joe on Stomping Grounds is probably, on paper, the match that I'm most looking forward to, apart from obviously Seth Rollins versus Baron Corbin. But Ricochet versus Samoa Joe should be really good. I hope it gets given a lot of time. If it's only like sort of 7 or 8 minutes long, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. I want this to get like 20 minutes. The two of those guys could put on a wonderful full-length match if given the opportunity to do so, like an NXT TakeOver style match, if you will. It's a tricky one because I'm not actually certain who I want to win that match, because I don't think either guy really deserves to lose. I like Samoa Joe as US champion going forwards. I'd also love to see Ricochet as US champion going forwards, but either way, the main thing is I just hope it gets quite a lot of time. Number 7, right, maybe a bit of an unexpected one. It's Dolph Ziggler. Now, I know that nobody wants to see Dolph Ziggler really in the WWE title picture. He's only there, as we all know, because Daniel Bryan was meant to be Kofi's next big challenger. He got injured. Then they brought in Kevin Owens and turned him heel, and then he refused to go to Saudi Arabia. So then they brought in Dolph Ziggler. Dolph is effectively like the third choice opponent for Kofi Kingston. He's his bronze medal. But that doesn't mean that Dolph isn't trying his best, and he really has been, despite some booking problems here and there. For example, his whole "it should have been me" thing is kind of an invalid argument, because back when Mustafa Ali got injured and Kofi was given the shot and became WWE champion, Ziggler was on Raw. So it shouldn't have been him really. But if we put that aside for a second, this week on SmackDown he was good. He cut a really nice promo. A few people said it was way too intense and a bit cringy, but I just think that's because we're not all on board with his spot in the number 1 contendership position. On the other hand, I like that he's going for it full throttle. Not only did he cut a good promo, but he also had that good match against Xavier Woods in the opening match of the night. Also in the match itself, Ziggler showed a new variation of his super kick where he kind of tied up Woods in the ropes and then super kicked him, and then Woods fell down and kind of flopped, and it looked a little bit brutal. It was pretty nice. I'd like to see that spot repeated at Stomping Grounds against Kofi Kingston, because of course they're in a steel cage match, so imagine like he kicks Kofi's head into the steel cage, and I think that could be a key set piece moment of the Stomping Grounds match. That is an official prediction from Jack the Jobber. Take that home with you, keep it, nurture it. So you know what, against the current, kind of swimming against the tide kind of thing, Dolph picks up 4 big Wrestlers of the Week points, and as well, because kind of on paper, him and Kofi are both really good wrestlers, it could be a really good match at Stomping Grounds. He could theoretically be picking up some more points next week as well. Next up, let's talk about one of the CEOs or executive vice presidents or whatever, one of the AEW lads, one of the center figures of AEW, and also one half of arguably the best tag team in the world, the Young Bucks. It's Mut Jackson. So let's talk about AAA, one of Mexico's biggest promotions, and they had one of their biggest shows of the year this past week, Verano de Escándalo, which I believe means Summer of Scandal. How cheeky. And the best match on the card by far, in my opinion, was the AAA tag title match between the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. It was, of course, a rematch from Double or Nothing, where they really had a really good match. Like the Bucks and the Lucha Bros put on an incredible, amazing display of athleticism at Double or Nothing. But it was overshadowed a little bit, in my opinion, by Cody versus Dustin. But it was still a wonderful match, and it's still well worth checking out if you haven't already. This rematch was actually a very different sort of match. Yes, they hit a lot of the same spots and stuff, but it was all crammed into sort of 10 or 11 minutes or so. So it was a very different kind of challenge. Was this match as good as the one against Double or Nothing? No, I wouldn't say so, but I think the crowd atmosphere made it a different sort of contest and a more unique sort of contest, because whereas at Double or Nothing, I think the crowd were kind of split between 2 very popular tag teams. In Mexico, everybody wanted the Lucha Brothers to win, and it made for a really good partisan atmosphere. So despite being in the maybe slightly unfamiliar role of a heel, although no, I guess that Mut Jackson's well used to being a heel from his days in the Bullet Club and being a cocky kind of I can do things that you can't do in the ring kind of guy. I guess it was kind of his natural calling, but since AEW's taken off, everybody loves the Young Bucks. They're so over, even, well, obviously before AEW, like being the elite and all that sort of thing, but at the same time, he kind of regressed back into his heelish state and was a key part of this match, and for that reason, I'm giving him some lovely Wrestlers of the Week points. Next up, a man who has picked up a fair few Wrestlers of the Week points this year, and also a few last year too, and when he's on his game, is one of my favourite and most captivating wrestlers around. It's Pentagon, or Pentagon Jr., or Serum, you know what I mean, bloke with a mask. Pentagon was one of the winners of the match. That's right, the Lucha Brothers recaptured those AAA tag team titles in front of a really ecstatic crowd. And Pentagon actually got the final pinfall as well. They did that move where he goes for the package pile driver and Phoenix jumps off the top, does a double stomp, and then bang, and you know what I'm talking about. I do think that the Lucha Brothers are potentially, maybe, one of my favourite tag teams in the world right now. It's really hard to work out who I think the best tag team in the world is. I often flip between several teams and I can't really settle on one that I think like they're my boys, they're the best tag team in the world. But more often than not, I do think it's the Lucha Brothers. With that being said, and it sounds contradictory, I think that maybe Pentagon is better as a single star. I miss his solo career. Because Pentagon was basically what got me into Lucha Underground back when Lucha Underground was a thing and was good. And I was just so captivated by him as a character, and also as a wrestler too. He's great in the ring. So I'd just be interested to hear what you think of that. Let me know in the comments below whether you prefer Pentagon in this tag team with his brother or as a single superstar instead. Superstar, you know what I mean, a singles wrestler instead. Because he's excellent at both, I just think that we're missing out a little bit with this tag team. Not that they're not a brilliant tag team, and they are, but I do miss Pentagon as a singles guy too. Next up, my boy, Darby Allin, who I actually briefly met in Las Vegas, did a bit of an interview with him and Priscilla Kelly as well, and he had another banger of a match this week at Northeast Wrestling against a man by the name of Jon Moxley. Now, you may have seen some GIFs of this online. It was a hugely well-received match. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. And basically, the thing that caught attention and went a little bit viral on Twitter was a GIF of a spot in the match where Darby Allin had his arms tied together behind his back, and then he still was able to pull off some incredible feats of athleticism, you know, like reversing and rolling and all that sort of stuff, eventually culminating in a big suicide dive with no hands to the outside onto Jon Moxley. Darby Allin's an insanely brave man. There's some things that could be regarded as stupid sometimes, but it always makes for compelling action, and that in-ring work combined with his dark and mysterious and very intense character, I think makes him one of the more exciting prospects in world wrestling today. And of course, with AEW signing him, I think his stock's only set to rise. Darby Allin also won the Northeast title the following night, but unfortunately I haven't been able to find that match. I haven't watched it yet, but I imagine it was probably pretty good. And of course, he has that match against Cody Rhodes, probably the biggest match of his career, coming up on Fyter Fest towards the end of the month, and I think that could be a very interesting clash of styles. I'll be very interested to see how they put the match together. Next up, speaking of Cody, a man who I think finds himself in a bit of a similar position to Cody and is kind of reminding me of him a little bit as the weeks go on. It's Jon Moxley. Now, obviously, Moxley had that wonderful match with Darby Allin and is probably the most exciting wrestler around today in terms of everyone watching what he's going to do. He could really change the game. You know, he's already, yes, a little bit tied down to AEW and New Japan, who he seems to have pledged the majority of his future to. But I do see the similarities with Cody, because when Cody left WWE, the world was his oyster. He seemed to be really creatively set free. He obviously wrote that list of people that he wanted to wrestle, and I think did wrestle most, if not all of them. And Jon Moxley finds himself in a similar position. Less, I guess, wide open and free, given the current landscape of professional wrestling, with AEW and New Japan also bringing him on for the G1. But I think that creatively and in the ring and in promos and everything, Moxley is absolutely on fire and only has the potential to get more and more popular as it goes on. You know, we were all kind of thinking, what's going to happen when he leaves WWE? And then since he strode out at Double or Nothing, I think everyone's just been like, wow, this guy is really going to take the wrestling world by storm. It sounds so stupid saying that about someone who's done it all already, former WWE champion, megastar with the Shield and all that sort of thing, but he's just adding another chapter to his career, and by the end of it, when it's all said and done, maybe we could look upon Moxley as something of a Jericho, somebody who did it in various different places and did it on his own terms outside of WWE. There's also that wonderful feeling that he could just pop up wherever and whenever, to quote Shakira, I think. And also, he's really nailing this character, because he's not a babyface, but he's not heel as well. And tweener characters or shades of grey characters are really hard to pull off. Often it can just seem like you're trying to be a heel, but you want to get cheered as well, so you're really cool with it. Or you're a babyface who just wants to do badass stuff and cheat all the time. Whereas to nail a proper tweener thing, it has to make sense for your character. And Jon Moxley is one of the few characters I can think of in wrestling who absolutely nails it each and every time. He is a tweener, but it works. Number 2, let's go back to that AAA tag team match, because I want to talk about a man named Mut Jackson. Now, something that actually disappointed me about that tag team match was what it could have been. You know, I really wanted to see the Young Bucks come out like Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr back in the day. Stars and stripes, proper All-American, really milking the heat from the crowd, really getting a lot of boos and really playing up to their full heel potential. That's not quite what the Bucks did, but I do think that Mut Jackson carried the spirit of that classic tag match with Guerrero and Barr into the future. He kind of was the dick, the American heel in this match, and made it a far more compelling contest for it. We all know that the Bucks and the Lucha Brothers can do all the flips for days and everything like that, and some really impressive stuff, but what really helped give this match a little bit of an edge and separate it slightly from Double or Nothing was the character work, and Mut Jackson, I think, really explored that to more of a full potential, at least, than maybe Nick did. I don't want to sound too harsh, because the Young Bucks are both great, but I just think that Mut was more of the absolute heel in this match. You know, he was kicking Pentagon behind the referee's back in the balls. He was ripping his mask off, trying to, you know, get Pentagon to cover his face so he could roll him up and stuff like that. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to keep the belts around the waist of the Young Bucks, but it was enough, I think, to make the title change just that little bit more spectacular and that little bit more meaningful. I've kind of summed up all my Mut Jackson points really quickly, so I guess the only other thing to do is reveal my Wrestler of the Week for week 25. We are rattling through this year. My Wrestler of the Week is none other than Phoenix. You know, this wasn't the perfect performance from Phoenix, I have to say. He took out some crowd members with some pretty wild dives, but in terms of encapsulating the passion and what it meant to bring those tag titles back to Mexico, I think that Phoenix deserves a full 10 points this week. I mean, you need to watch the celebration at the end of the match because Pentagon gets the pinfall victory, but once Phoenix has done his double stomp and Pentagon's done like the big package pile driver, Phoenix then doesn't break stride, just charges out of the ring, huge dive to take out the other Young Buck on the outside to secure the pinfall, and then the camera goes back to Pentagon for the pinfall. He's all like, yes, we've done it, we've won the belts. The camera tries to find Phoenix on the outside and he's gone. He's just gone, and everyone's like, where is he? He's in the bloody front row, he's celebrating with the fans because he's that ecstatic to be winning the tag titles back. I think he just did some sort of like headlong dive into the front row, and the camera just catches him just celebrating in the crowd, and it's a really genuine and emotional moment. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But of course, that's not the only reason that I've set Phoenix apart here. Phoenix, I think, is one of those wrestlers who's become a little more underrated as a single star, like his brother, because he's in this excellent tag team. But you forget just how mind-blowing Phoenix is as a wrestler. He does some crazy stuff. He did some wonderful stuff in this match too. Yes, as I've said, it was a condensed version of their Double or Nothing match, but the stuff that he does is still impressive, whether he's doing it in Vegas or a couple of weeks later in Mexico. It's still absolutely mind-blowing, the control he has over his body, the rope walk stuff he does, and I really want to see him in like a Best of the Super Juniors tournament or a series of matches where we once again get to see just how fantastic he is on his own. Now, I know I said that about Pentagon as well. I'm not saying I want the Lucha Brothers to break up, I just miss their solo stuff. Phoenix was one of the highlights of Lucha Underground for me and demonstrated his versatility as well. High-flying matches, he had that casket match against Mil Muertes. This is turning into me reminiscing about Lucha Underground, isn't it? So without any further ado, let's take a look at the league table. Not a lot of change in the top 25, but if we get a little bit further down, we see Ricochet has jumped up to 6th place alongside Jay White and Pac, and a little bit further down from him, we see the guy I was just talking about, Phoenix, up to 13th on 28 points. Just 50 points behind Will Ospreay. You can do it, Phoenix. All you need to do is win 5 weeks in a row, and you'll be right up there. The G1 is coming up soon as well, New Japan's G1 Climax, so you could see a lot of NJPW guys really start to progress up the table over the next month and a half or so. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.